There were surprises, shock and awe, some things left unfinished, mistakes, meltdowns, injuries, bad food, good food, poo emoji shaped chocolate. That too.
Trying my hardest not to make them look like those emojis. Mission not as successful as you'd think. Whoa, one fell down.
So hello everyone, welcome to, first of all, a new year. Very good to see you here, 2025. You're also in the far corner of my studio, so it's good to see you there. And when we're not in the kitchen, and it's the beginning of the year, that usually means an anti-chef annual ranking video. That's usually what that means. And we're gonna go through everything that I cooked last year, 2024. We're gonna get into the weeds, take a microscope to it all, and reminisce on the good dishes, dwell on the bad ones, and disclaimer. I always like to give a disclaimer at the beginning of these videos. I'm poking fun at me, not taking jabs at any chef or anyone like that. No, it's all me. For the most part, I think, yeah, we're just having fun, ha ha. Ha, ha, ha. I'm gonna cover everything from Jamie and Julia to Jamie and Chef, the cage matches, and the cakes, cakes. I'm gonna exclude some stuff though too. The bagel recipe from Julia Child, I still say bagel, yes, deal with it. Also, every way that Julia Child cooked an egg, the Agathon video, I'm gonna exclude both of those. I don't know how to rank them. Also, the two country recipes from Burundi and Cambodia, I'm not gonna include in here too, because it's kind of weird to stack something like that up against Michelin star dishes, for example. Like, how do you do that? I won't. I got a lot of ground to cover here, so savory, sweet, it's gonna be like how I break it up. I'm gonna break it up into those two. So let's start with the main course, savory. Okay, we're gonna start off with dead last. Just absolutely terrible. 31 is Marco Pierre White's tagliatelle with oysters and caviar. PU. Every single component is wrong. Right, so this is one of those days where it just sucked. I don't ever give up on a recipe, but this was one of those that I had to. I didn't have a vision. I lost the plot. Everything was just getting gradually worse and worse to the point where I was like, I had all the components, but I didn't know how to put them together. This is the most bland looking, disgusting, ugly dish I could have ever dreamed of. It almost feels like Marco Pierre White's writing these recipes with the intention of leaving you kind of high and dry, almost like he's like, I want you to make this, kind of, although I'm gonna leave a bunch of things out. This does not deserve caviar, because I got it. I got it right here. And I paid a pretty penny for it. It's 2 ounces of black sturgeon caviar. But I don't get to have it tonight. So it's just hanging out in the fridge for a couple weeks to a month or whatever, and I was like, does this stuff go bad? I wasn't sure. So outside of the show one day, for my own dinner, I just ate it. F it. So next up we got Jacques Pepin's coq au vin recipe. So I just made this one, and I'm getting a lot of people in the comments telling me that Jacques developed this recipe during this like low-fat, healthy craze from the 80s / the 90s. And that's all making sense to me now because there was no bacon. He had me remove the chicken bones and the chicken skin. There was no beef stock added to this thing. I wasn't looking for something healthy this day. I was looking for something tasty that was gonna go up against 2 other coq au vin recipes, which turned out to be far superior.
This isn't as much of a stew as Julia's.
I guess I just had expectations of this recipe that were not met, and I'm sure Jacques Pepin has a really good coq au vin recipe out there somewhere. I don't think it was this one, or at least if you're looking for something healthy, maybe there you go. But I was not. Anyway, 2 thumbs down. Moving on to number 30, Julia Child's paella. I feel like this was an uphill battle to begin with. Julia is not known for Spanish food, and this is one of those recipes of hers where she's kind of adding a lot of ingredients into a very simple dish. And I've only really ever had good paella either in Spain or a Spanish restaurant. I think that's the only times I've ever had paella.
So let it boil for 5 to 6 minutes. Do not stir it and leave it uncovered. Please do not burn on the bottom.
So when you mix in me and my execution of things, I didn't get the paella crust, socarat. I didn't get it. And a lot of flavors in that, it's like the best part. So yeah, that was missing, and it was fairly forgettable, and it just wasn't a hit, in my opinion. Lame. I think it was lame. So starting things off on a very harsh note, but I'm hoping to warm up as this list progresses. Number 29, Julia Child's Beef Wellington. This is from another one of my cage match videos. I made this in conjunction with 2 other Beef Wellington recipes, and this was an inferior product. It really shows how, I guess, convoluted some of the steps were and unnecessary some of the steps were. So I'm thinking that, since this is an older recipe than the other 2 that I made, maybe Gordon Ramsay's, Jamie Oliver's Beef Wellingtons, which are the better ones, in my opinion, they learned something from the past and then they implemented it into their recipe. I don't know, that's what I like to think. I'm gonna extend an olive branch to Julia here and say that maybe things made a little more sense back then when you didn't have like the internet to answer all of your burning questions. But like this pastry case thing that she has us do, a couple times last year, I had to make a pastry case, and it's just very awkward.
Bake the base pie dough on this, as in like a case, and then it's a pie dough that will stand upright, and then you can put the beef inside the case.
I just found that the flavors were lacking, and it was just a miss. It was a miss. Next up, 28, Julia Child's fried chicken, aka Chris Brown sauteed chicken. This simple and straightforward chicken sauté with its combination of browning and baking is the French answer to American fried chicken. So this chicken here did not have a crispy exterior. That's what you're looking for with fried chicken, right? And I think I'm to blame because I'm making this show and the order which I do things, maybe I cooked the chicken a little too early and then I went to make the side dish, which was this potato thing. And then by the time I served everything, it just wasn't what I was hoping for. I think there's an interesting technique with this recipe. There's something there.
Whoa, whoa. What the hell is happening right now?
I ask that question a lot on this show. So that was me deep frying an egg. That was a fun time. Number 27 is Julia Child's chicken Marengo, Napoleon's favorite dish. I would really like this dish if there was like if it was a well-made version of this dish. I think I would like this more than I ultimately liked it. It's chicken, tomato sauce, olives, shrimp, deep fried eggs on bread there. It's just like a lot of things mushrooms. I did enjoy what I made here. I think that's a good place for it on the list. Number 26, Julia Child's pot au feu. Pot on fire. It holds all the recipes to the latter half of Julia's French chef. Gotta be honest here, I don't remember much about this TV show, the episodes that are in color. But my voice, I'm sick. I'm sick as a dog here. It is a boiled beef and vegetable dinner, French style, and you can hear how nasally my voice is. Got a bit of a cold, so it's the perfect day for it. And my taste buds were not working. So making something like this, which is ultimately a beef stew, probably was the right call. Home-cooked goodness, hearty. You're gonna be well fed after you eat it, but it's nothing flashy. But it's in a list with a bunch of flashy things, so that's where it is. And speaking of flashy, Gordon Ramsay's roasted filet of beef with a truffle and root vegetable infusion. Number 25. This is the thing I found by making all these Michelin star type dishes at home by myself.
Cool. Making progress.
You learn a lot. You're pulling out all the stops, and there's a lot of new techniques and cool tricks that you didn't know, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of neat.
Wow, the beef trimmings just kind of took me for granted there.
But at the same time, there's so many damn components to this dish that by the time you plate it all up and try to match the cookbook photo, that's what I was trying to do here, and make it look pretty, the entire dish is cold. That's also something that happens while making this show, right? I'm eating cold food quite a bit, but with this one, I do remember that it sticks out. And you try to heat parts of it up, but there's some things that are easier to heat up than others, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, I'll just eat it. I do remember liking it very much. It's just, you know, a lot of work for something that is cold.
I like that. That is a dish that you make at home purely for the challenge. There's no other, like, it's not practical to make.
Number 24, Marco Pierre White's steak recipe, which is steak confit of shallots and garlic, mushrooms, steak confit of shallots and garlic, mushroom fricassee in a red wine and shallot sauce. Okay. I put way too much food on that plate. I think my 2025 goal here is when I do make more recipes like this, the fancy dishes, I got a clue in here that it's not always just about matching to the photo in the cookbook, because I didn't have the same plate that they're using here. So, you know, you have to adapt and pivot. I mean, this plate just looks ridiculous. It's just too much food here. I just filled it up to the brim. And yes, I was trying to find an excuse to use up as much food as I was cooking here, but it just looks silly. You don't have one of those rimmed plates, Jamie. Don't act like you do. Again, Marco Pierre White's kind of leaving some things out of the recipe here because he tells me to make a parsley puree.
A little more squeezes out of the parsley. That's all that remains right there.
But I guess you have to be bright enough, and I guess I'm not, to remove the stems from the parsley before you puree it so that it's nice and smooth, instead of it having like the texture of like grass. So that's what happened. The comments pointed that one out. Anyway, the confit of garlic method here is memorable. The sauce and the steak were solid. But again, like the previous dish I was just talking about, it was kind of a cold plate of food because there's just so many things going on. Yeah. Okay, number 23, Julia Child's Salmon Wellington. I enjoyed this one. And this is like known to be a big time Russian classic recipe, the kulibiak. And when I look up other kulibiaks online, a lot of them keep the salmon whole, where I was breaking it all up into little pieces, and just the rice to salmon ratio here, I think, is a bit askew. Julia's got us doing this pastry case thing. This is my first time attempting a pastry case.
Okay.
It's a whole dog and pony show. There's just, you know, there's got to be a different way. Besides that, I like this. Number 22, Jacques Pepin's chicken ballotine. This was the first recipe that I made last year. You gotta bone the chicken, stuff the chicken, stop and think about what you're saying here. You don't wanna say something like that and then it ends up on the internet. Whoops. And then you roll the chicken. And the chicken on the outside was very crisp. It was nice, tender on the inside. The stuffing, flavorful. I mean, I remember that the stuffing was really nice, but the sauce was kind of lacking. So I cut my finger a couple times making this thing, like deep cuts too. So that kind of stung. Number 21, Julia Child's ham pithivier.
This is gonna feel really good. Like that. Order up!
And just had like the worst time making this.
So it's been a day.
So many terrible memories. But it was good. Number 20, Julia Child's lasagna. Now this is kind of a peculiar lasagna recipe. You're using up the leftovers in your kitchen. You're throwing them in this thing. I didn't have these leftovers, so I just made everything from scratch, which helps the lasagna's placement on this list, that's for sure, because everything was very nice. There's something I have to say here about this lasagna, because the comments are all saying the same thing, which is once you remove the lasagna from the oven, you let it rest before you cut it open. That way it keeps its shape. Just wanted you to know that, just for the record, that I did let it rest. All right, so 19, Marco Pierre White's braised pig's foot. Here's the thing with this recipe. It took so much time to prepare for this one because there is a lot of difficult ingredients to find. I took an entire day looking for specific things, like the pig's foot. Like searching for something like that can be, it's not difficult, but I was looking for a specific size. It needed to be like yay big. So I went to New York, Chinatown, and found that, no problem. And then I went to another area of the city to find the sweetbreads. And then there were the morel mushrooms here, which was in another part of town. So I spent the day preparing for this thing. As much doubt as there was preparing for this video, and there was much, I was walking around the city with all these ingredients in my backpack, just thinking to myself, what are you doing? Anyway, I'm glad I kept at it because, first of all, I enjoyed the dish.
Well, the anticipation is killing me. I honestly wasn't sure I was going to like this thing. Turns out, I like this thing.
And second of all, it turned out to be my most popular video of last year. It has like over 1 million views for a braised pig's foot video. So that's cool. So the thing is, you're not really eating like pig's foot per se. I mean, it's the pig's foot skin, but the foot has been hollowed out. Like you've removed the bone and then you add chicken mousse to the inside. So it's really just a pig's foot. It looks like a pig's foot. It's got the illusion that it is all pig's foot, but it's stuffed with chicken. Hell yeah. Number 18 is Jacques Pepin's duck cassoulet. It's almost been a year since I made this sucker. And the thing that I remember most of all are those breadcrumbs that were soaked in the duck fat. That was the best part of this recipe. It just was running through the whole thing. It's just like a nutty duck, pork, pancetta, and sausage there also. Now that I've made 2 cassoulets, this one and then Julia's, I've kind of run into the same issue, which is by the time it comes out of the oven, all of the liquid, the stew, the stock has been absorbed by everything else. So you're just eating a big hunk of a brick. I wish that there was more stew to this thing. I clue in when I'm eating the leftovers, which were plenty, that, I would heat it up and then I would add some stock. And then I was like enjoying it a little more now that it had a little more of a stew and not just a big pile. Number 17, Marco Pierre White's salmon and basil cream sauce. What? This was my introduction to Marco Pierre White. This is the first one I made, and it was one of his easier recipes. Intimidating as hell cookbook, but this was something that was manageable. Honestly, it's having a hard time recalling anything about this. There's the dry fry method in this one, right?
What we're doing is a thing called a dry fry. Sounds pretty self-explanatory. So on a very high heat on my non-stick pan, 1.5 minutes per side. That's it.
Feel like we underdid it here. Yeah, I was following his cook times in the recipe, but yeah, it's a little too raw for me. Jamie?
That's a 10 out of 10.
A 10 out of 10?
This is a great way to cook salmon if you like it cooked a specific way, which I don't always, like when I'm cooking myself, I don't always, but that was phenomenal. Dry fried to perfection.
Man, I'm really praising this thing, so maybe it needs to be higher on the list. We'll see. Number 16, Morimoto's Angry Chicken. I guess we're in that middle of the list here where it's kind of things that are hard to keep track track of because I can barely remember the damn thing also. Oh, right. This is the thing that had that cool noodle thing, right? So this is that recipe where I use the entire bottle of Frank's hot sauce as a marinade, and then I turn that into a sauce. It's almost like you're eating chicken wings, like buffalo chicken wings. Then there's all these chili peppers on the dish there, which I started eating too. Somehow I survived this. Rock on. Number 15, Martha Stewart's Polish Feast. Cabbage pierogi, potato pancakes, and a cold borscht. I enjoyed it. It really hit the spot that day. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I need to move this in the list. So I think I'm going to switch this with the salmon in the list. So it's going to go down 2 spots. Up comes the salmon. Yeah. So for some reason, when I'm looking at this video, it reminds me of getting a haircut that I hated. Yeah. And then I made the thumbnail and I used another photo of me from a different day with longer hair because I wasn't thrilled about the haircut. Do you know that feeling? So that's interesting. And then there's the Polish Feast here. So, all right. 14 is Chef Morimoto's Tuna Pizza. Shout out to this being the last video filmed in the old kitchen, so that will always mean a little something. Also, I loved it. I love stuff like this, especially when it's done right. I thought that was very good. Number 13, Anthony Bourdain's Coq au vin. So I don't want to rehash everything because I feel like I go into great detail in this video that I made and I just made it. So yeah, let's not get into all of it. But yeah, the sauce was killer. The chicken needed a little something. It was middle of the road, Coq au vin. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 and we're going to move on to 12. Chef Morimoto's pork gyoza with an old-fashioned tomato sauce and a bacon cream reduction. Delicious. Yeah. Number 11, Julia Child's croquettes. I mean, this is something that is deep fried and then there's cheese in it, so that's a winning combo. And then half of them had shrimp in it also. And then I made an aioli sauce by hand. So you need a little patience here, and I'm very happy with the results. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna brag about the aioli sauce. I think that was really cool. It's a brag. Okay, number 9 and 10 is gonna be, it's nearly a tie here. So we have Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart's mac and cheese recipes. This is one of the hard-hitting questions of our time, right? Whose mac and cheese is better? Well, I'm gonna break it to you. It's like nearly a tie. On any given day, one could be better than the next. On this day, it was Martha's because of the inclusion of the breadcrumbs. I was just feeling it, I think. But now that I've read the comments, I'm thinking, well, do breadcrumbs really enhance a mac and cheese? I guess that's a very good question. I thought so on the day, but now I'm thinking, you know what? I don't know. I just like Martha's was creamier and it had the addition of the 2 cheeses. And on that day, I was more into that one. But any other day, I feel like Snoop Dogg's would have a good chance at winning this thing. Is by a hair. And maybe just like I made Martha's better on that day than Snoop's. I don't know. Ultimately, I think if you just combined both mac and cheeses, that would be something. These are another 2 that are so close that it's hard to separate them. So let's give 8 to Gordon Ramsay's lobster ravioli, and then 7 to Marco Pure White's lobster ravioli. Actually, you know what? Of all the things that I made last year, if there were an award for most proud, it'd be for these. So number 6 is Julia Child's Indian Feast. Didn't think that I'd enjoy this one as much as I did. I don't know how this is gonna look on camera, but in front of me, this is heavenly. Just having everything on a plate like this, just like piled together. Nothing gets better than that. But it is ahead of the ravioli based on how much I loved my life here. Leaning on that counter, light shining down on me, and I'm scarfing that sucker down. The feast rocked. The curry was sensational. I just loved it. And then all the fixings there too. It's just like, it was a good day and I slept like a baby. Number 5 is Julia Child's Lobster Thermidor. This was my second attempt at this recipe. It was time for a little redemption. So that's what it's supposed to taste like. This
is incredible. C'est magnifique. That's a French masterpiece right there. A very good lobster dish is always going to find its way to the top of a list like this for me. So here it is. Yeah, right at the top. Nearly. All right, so number 4 is Gordon Ramsay's beef welly. It was very good. Probably the biggest upset in cage match history. Another beef Wellington taking the crown. The comments section did light up when I didn't brush mustard on the outside of the beef after searing it. And I'm aware of that step. I've heard all about the brushing of the mustard on the beef. I didn't do it because I was following the recipe in this cookbook. Yeah, in this cookbook here, this is what I was following. I mean, I'm showing you here that there is no mention of mustard anywhere in this recipe, in this cookbook. Okay? If you go to the beef Wellington recipe on his website, gordonramsay.com, there is no mustard mentioned there either. In fact, that is the exact same recipe that's in this cookbook. Isn't that interesting? But I believe what's happened here is that he has updated the recipe since he wrote that book. And if you go to Masterclass, the recipe is here, and there is the Dijon mustard. And also there is a chive crepe included in this recipe, which I didn't do. So there you have it. We're having fun. We're having a good time. It's a blast from the past. Number 3 is Julia Child's Eggs Benedict. The lesson to take away from this recipe is to make your own English muffins, at least once in your life, to experience it. I know it's a hassle, but it is well worth it. It was a revelation, and you're comparing them with store-bought. It was no comparison, really. Homemade all the way. And for the remainder of the week, I had leftover English muffins. I was eating 2 at a time at one point. It's just like English muffin addict. It was a great week. Anyway, what am I doing here? English muffins. Oh, the Eggs Benedict. Everything went well with this recipe, though. It was the best Eggs Benedict I've ever had. And it took a long time to make this thing, and it didn't last long. But for that minute, it was divine. Every single part of this dish was phenomenal. Even the arugula. So number 2 is Jamie Oliver's Beef Wellington. Sending a ripple through the Beef Wellington world, I'm sure. When I chose his recipe to be included in this cage match, I had no idea it was going to win. I actually thought it would probably come in last against Gordon's and Julia Child's. That's not how it played out, though. The one thing I learned from the whole experience is that there are a lot of people that are not fans of Jamie Oliver. And I guess I was not privy to this information. I just thought Jamie Oliver was Jamie Oliver. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie and say I didn't love it. I loved it. Number one, Julia Child's coq au vin. So this is the perfect recipe. It's masterful technique. The flavors are phenomenal. There's an epic flambe. Whoa! Yes! So I think of the trifecta of Julia Child recipes. I think of the French onion soup, which I made last year, and it was at the top of the ranking video last year. It was so good. It's epic. And then the beef bourguignon. I had a cage match for that, and it easily won, no questions asked. And now we have the coq au vin, which is very similar to the beef bourguignon, except it has chicken. And here we are again at the tippity top of the list. Takes a long time to get through these lists. That's more coffee. The thing about this list here is it really does highlight the highs and the lows of cooking. You got to be patient because you can have some pretty dishes, but you can have some extraordinary ones. So you just gotta take the good and the bad and everything in between, and then you just learn from it, you know? You're learning. Lots to be learned. If I look back at where I was last year and where I am now, I'm like, holy hell. You know, people watch this show and they always think I'm putting on some sort of act.
I can assure you I'm not. I'm really just going out there taking the swings, and sometimes I strike out. Anyway, that's the savory food, and now I think I'm ready for dessert. Number 17, piñata cake.
Why didn't any of you stop me?
It was a bad day in the kitchen.
Oftentimes, sometimes, it doesn't go the way you want it to go. I'm not gonna take one more step in this freaking kitchen because every single thing that I do is wrong today, so.
Number 16, Jacques Pepin's Mont Blanc. This is gonna be the video that is forever known to me as the one where I nearly cut my thumb off.
Well, this is what happened. I went over behind the camera to go fetch the food processor, the Whiz Kid, from the cupboard from which it lives. And when I did so, this stupid vegetable slicer that goes with the food processor fell on the ground like so. And I reached down to go pick it up and I missed it, and my thumb kind of dragged along the top, and through this blade right here, I sliced my thumb like a carrot. I never want to see that again. So yeah, I had to go to urgent care so that they could glue me back up again. And I had to put this dessert on pause.
So the illustration in the cookbook left a lot to the imagination. So I was like, I didn't really know what to expect. I was kind of expecting a mountain because it's called a Mont Blanc, white mountain. I was underwhelmed on the day. I tried to stay positive, but in hindsight, I'm just like, yeah, just leave that one in the past. Should have made like a personal size Mont Blanc. This thing ended up being way too big, but yeah, the big baked meringue discs, and there's whipped cream, glazed chestnuts, and that chestnut chocolate cream there. That just looks like poo-poo.
I just need to get piping large brown logs onto this thing. And you know what would be smart? And make another one of these right here. So how about the stackin' sundae cake?
Right, okay, so 15 is gonna be the stackin' sundae cake. I will call it the pancake cake. Now this is one of those things that was meant for like TV, right? Like it's for the Great British Bake Off TV show. So yeah, I can see it doing well when they present it and they're like, ooh la la, pancake cake. But it's more for decoration because truthfully, I was eating it and I was like, okay, well, there's not much enjoyment here because it's just so much freaking pancake fondant that's covered in food coloring all over the exterior of this thing. And you just kind of like don't want to eat all of that because it's just meant to mold the pancake shapes around it rather than like, what are you going to do? Eat all of that? There are plus sides here. Like that granola crumble thing was insanely delicious, as was the blueberry compote. So two winners here. Like if we're going to get into like the nitty gritty here, the cake did not taste like blueberry pancakes at all.
Wasn't picking up the pancakes. It was more like a blueberry oatmeal muffin meets banana bread.
Honestly, if we're making a list for decorative cakes, this would be right at the top, but actual food categories like this, 15th. We gotta be harsh, we gotta be honest, we gotta keep going. Number 14, Julia Child's Cambridge cake. This was the first thing I made in this kitchen back here. And I had to make this with its chocolate walls, the chocolate bow, the butter, so much butter. But here's the thing, it was so hot outside. You know, the summers are getting hotter, and this one was particularly hot through a stretch. And I was still trying to sort out the air conditioning, so it wasn't really working, but also it just could not keep up with how hot it was. So it was hot in here, it's scorching. It's super loud too, so I had to keep turning it off and on because it was affecting me talking to the camera, and I had to communicate. So yeah, everything was melting, the chocolate.
The fridge is just too small for what Julia is asking for. Shut up! I'm gonna use a fan, I think, and just have it directly at that.
And then at the end of the day, it was mediocre. I could just taste butter. It was just so much butter. The buttercream was intensely buttery. It was a mocha buttercream, but lots of butter. Butter. Number 13, James Beard's tomato soup cake. The day I made this video, which is this cake here, and then there was a mayonnaise cake. Maybe I should just say it now. Number 12 is James Beard's mayo cake. The day I made these two cakes was the craziest day of my life. I don't really want to get into too much about it. I hope everyone's okay. I don't want to get into too much detail in this ranking video about what went on outside of the kitchen, because this is all about what took place in the kitchen. But, I mean, you can guess. Like, I started making these cakes, and then halfway through something pretty interesting happened, so I had to pause the video. Then I came back to it, tried to finish it, and then it's just like other things were happening too. So the last thing that was on my mind was really these cakes, but I had to keep going. The show must go on. Tomato soup cake, the mayonnaise cake. This cake had way too many nuts and raisins in it, the tomato soup cake, and I overbaked it. The mayonnaise cake was underbaked. Earlier this year, I was following recipes out of the big book of amazing cakes from the TV show The Great British Bake Off, with the pancake cake, the piñata cake, and then the next two. They're all from that book. I thought it would be a good idea to make cakes from the TV show The Great British Bake Off, and then about 4 cakes into it, I realized that it wasn't that good of an idea. So number 11 is the Fraisier cake. It's the first one I made from that book. Crème patisserie issues with this cake. Structurally speaking, it was delicious, but it could not keep it together for the sake of the appearance of the cake. Flavor-wise, it was so on point, and it went so perfectly with fresh strawberries. Not normally the biggest fan of the thing that's on top, the almond marzipan thing. It kind of takes me back to the pancake cake with the marshmallow fondant. It's just like two things that I'm not too crazy about. But with this cake, it did work when you're eating it all together with... If I was ranking this list blind, I think this would be a real winner, but because I can see that there's some frustration there with the unmolding and then the transferring to the serving dish, yeah. Number 10, the orange salted caramel and chocolate mirror glaze cake. It excelled in an area that the Fraisier cake failed. Presentation-wise, this is like one of the nicest looking cakes I've ever made. A lot of techniques that came together in the end. Like, I was trying and failing with this mirror glaze here, but I figured it out, and look how glossy and shiny that is. And then what are these things here? Hazelnuts? Oh, right, caramelized hazelnuts with the little, like the points on top. I'm looking at this thing right now, and I'm thinking, why did I rank this so low? I want to put it up higher on this list. Let's put it to 8. 8. Okay, that means I need to move something back to 10 here. So let's go, sorry, Enchanted Forest, you're going to 10. This thing is very fresh on my mind. I just made it, and reading through the comments of the video, people are calling it, they're calling it names. Some people are calling it the finger cake. Other people call it the ashtray cake. I can see where they're going with that. I kind of agree, because it doesn't really look like an enchanted forest now that I'm looking at it. It is still very enchanted, maybe an enchanted ashtray, but in all seriousness, chocolate cake with chocolate ganache and chocolate or cocoa meringue, that's a killer combo. If you're gonna make this damn cake, then I should warn you, do not put the meringue sticks into the cake until you're ready to serve this thing, because they will not keep. They're gonna start becoming mushy or soggy, and they're just not gonna hold it together. So it's when you're ready to serve it, meringue sticks go in. Otherwise, you kind of have something that's not gonna work. The cigarettes. Put those in when you're ready to serve. Enchanted Forest goes up to 10. Orange salted caramel cake goes to 8. That means number 9 is open for Martha Stewart's French toast triangles with homemade bread. Gotta point out the bread, because that was the best part about it. But yeah, this was a fun thing to do one day. You've had it once, I think you're good. It's deep fried French toast. I prefer it done the traditional way. Now the French bread, let's go back to that because that was phenomenal. It was a Julia Child recipe, and that was the big takeaway from all of this, was making my own bread. Okay, so number 7, Thomas Keller's Vanilla Macarons. So this was a rematch. It was due time to make another macaron video, so I'm happy I did it. Everything went successfully for the most part. It went well, and I'm so glad it did because I did use a hell of a lot of vanilla. 2 vanilla beans. Next time when I make these things, which won't be for a while now, many years, I'm gonna work on something, and it's gonna be size containment. Because I'm looking at this plate that's in front of me, and all of those look very nice, but if you look behind me, see that right there? That is a plate of misfit macarons. It's just various shapes and sizes, and I'd like just all of them to be one size. Capiche?
That one is so rich.
Believe it or not, I started this video in the morning and it's dark outside. Good news for all those Jacques Pepin fans out there. He's come in number 6 with his chocolate mousse in the dessert ranking list. Bravo. That being said, he did lose the chocolate mousse cage match because he placed last out of 3. So this is the first of 3 chocolate mousses right here. This is one of my favorite videos from all of last year. And the reason why is because Christy right here has joined me on the main stage and ate the mousse with me. The stars aligned for this video, and it was fun to have her there, and you know.
A little more dense in the texture.
Yeah.
This is a lot different. Richer, I think.
It's way different than that one.
Anyway, the texture of this one was a bit thick, kind of off. It was more like a chocolate icing for a cake, but the flavor, uber rich and beautiful.
Cleanse your palate.
Cleansing.
Okay, speaking of mousse, here's Thomas Keller's, coming in at number 5. But the chocolate flavor was very subdued and toned down, especially when comparing to the Jacques Pepin one that we were just talking about. It ranks higher on that list because the texture and because the appearance, also because of, what am I going?
Light. Very easy to pierce. Whoa.
Okay.
Okay, so I definitely taste another ingredient in that.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Espresso.
Okay.
Oh no, I forgot a recipe. Did I forget something? Oh, 4 desserts left, and I just realized that there's a 5th. The cabinet pudding. I forgot all about the damn cabinet pudding. I have to put this somewhere on the list. It's nowhere near the top 4, so where is it going to be placed? Oh dear. So the cabinet pudding is going to go right behind the Enchanted Forest. Now that it is a new year, we can leave the homemade ladyfingers behind us and focus on only store-bought ladyfingers moving forward. I hate ladyfingers.
Mark my words, I will never, ever try to make ladyfingers ever again.
But the custard that was absorbed into the ladyfingers was a very nice touch. And you know, it has like a bread pudding vibe to it, kirsch flavor to it, which is a cherry brandy, so it's very boozy. Glacéd fruit was a nice touch around the holidays, but now that it is after the holidays, we don't talk about glacéd fruit over here. And then one would say too many raisins in that dessert too. But that's a nice place for it, right behind the Enchanted Forest. Moving on. Martha Stewart's cheesecake takes 4th place. Very dense, sweet, creamy, glorious. It was a very good cheesecake. And then it's set, which I thought it looked very nice too. Okay, so this video has been a thorn in my side since I released it because people have been telling me, all right, okay, so this is very important here. There's a lot of people giving me grief in the comments of this video about the crust or the lack thereof, because I talk about how I wish there was a crust in this cake. And she calls for a 1/4 pound of finely ground almonds. Well, then the very first few sentences in this recipe here, it says, cake pan, dust with ground almonds. Dust. A dust to me is just it's a dusting. It's just a very thin dusting. Just kind of line the inside of the cake pan with the almonds. But people are like, dude, that's your almond crust. You're supposed to make a crust out of that because it's a 1/4 pound worth.
She says nothing about that.
Now, there is a comment under this video here. It has 1,000 likes. Listen to this. Calls for a 1/4 pound of almond crust, dusts it with 2 teaspoons, and then complains about missing almond taste. LOL. That has 1,000 likes. And first of all, I was not complaining. It was just more of like an observation, like, hey, I wish there was an almond flavor running through this cake. It wasn't a complaint.
Can't really pick up the ground almonds around. She was promising a pleasing contrast. That didn't really happen. The ground almonds just kind of vanished. And what would make this an 11 out of 10? Maybe 12, 15? The crust.
You open up this thread here and look at this comment, 183 likes. Also complains that it doesn't have a crust. The ground almonds are supposed to be a crust.
It's kind of just dawning on me right now that there is no crust for this cheesecake, which is kind of like, huh? Interesting. I like a cheesecake with like a graham cracker crust. You know, different strokes for different folks here.
How is a dusting of almonds supposed to be a crust? And you know what? There's people in this comment section, I know you're out there, that came to my defense and you were speaking up saying, hey, I watched an old Martha Stewart video of her making this cheesecake, and yes, all she does is a dusting of the almonds. She doesn't have the almond crust.
With the most delicious almondy flavor. So that's it, and then any excess you just can shake right out. That is your pan.
In baking, dusting is the technique of lightly covering a surface with a powdery substance. Lightly covering. A dusting. Number 3 is going out to Julia Child's crepe frangipane. Crepe frangipane. Okay, so last week's dessert. That's just made this sucker, so it's fresh on my mind. I don't even have to look at the video. Talk to you. This thing was very good. Yeast battered crepes. Those were very nice, and then they were stuffed with this frangipane. Chocolate grated on top, and then butter and sugar, and now I'm on a diet. So pretty close to a top tier dessert, I would say. Just slightly, yeah, pretty close. All right, number 2 is going with another Julia Child near perfect recipe, her chocolate mousse. Near perfect. I'd say perfect. Why am I saying near perfect? No, it was like perfection. Texture and flavor made both me and Christy very happy.
Good God.
Oh my God.
It's like the best chocolate mousse I've ever had.
It tastes like air, like chocolate flavored air. That's insane.
Oh my God, that's...
We're both very happy about it. And then there was an orange liqueur flavor running through the whole thing too, which was nice.
Are you picking up the mysterious flavor in there?
A little bit of orange?
That's it!
Are you serious?
Yes.
It won the cage match and it nearly won the year here, but it didn't. Number 1 is going to Marco Pure White's Lemon Tart. This is one of the best desserts I've ever made, and I know I said it in the show, and I gotta believe me.
One of the best desserts I've ever made, for sure. I think. I don't know, it's hard to keep track, but I think.
And you're like, okay, well, what's the big deal? It's a lemon tart. This thing, right out of the oven, holy hell. I think if Marco Pure White just provided a little more information in the recipe, it would have been a very simple recipe to make, but he didn't.
Usually you add like ice cold water to the dough, just to like some of it, just to bind it together, but this hasn't been... Is he assuming I should be adding that?
So there was a little confusion with the crust initially. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out in the end, so there's no issues here. And there's a vanilla flavor running through the crust. It was very good. The lemon custard was, it was sharp, as I recall, just a sharp lemon flavor. Sweet, sour, sharp. I think the secret weapon here is this caramelized sugar on top.
It's like creme brulee.
And then underneath was the silkiness and the creaminess of the lemon tart filling, and then we had the pie crust. So 3 textures. And with those 3, it gets the advantage over the chocolate mousse to claim the number 1 spot for the end of the year. Although it may have been a more difficult recipe to follow than Julia's because Marco Pure White doesn't make it easy on you.
The only gripe I have is in my department. The ratios are off. It needs way more filling. It's probably why he had me make way more filling.
That's the winner of the desserts. And then for savory, think of this menu here. Julia Child's coq au vin recipe, and for dessert, the lemon tart. That's what you want to do. Anyway, I'm ready to put 2024 behind me. Look to the future. What do we have in store? I haven't planned anything yet, but I'm thinking. The wheels are turning. So let's start brainstorming. Not right now. I think I'm ready to wrap it up. But I would like to thank all of you that watch these videos and keep this thing going, because this is like a dream come true of mine, to be able to make videos and cook. And just, well, I'm learning to cook, of course. Nothing is faked over here. It's all real. I'm a real person, believe it or not. And everyone that is commenting on the videos and like this anti-chef community, it's just amazing. It really is. If you want like cool cooking tips, look to the comments. Except for the cheesecake video. The 1,000 people that liked that one comment. But other than that, I'm just joking. I love you guys too, even though it's just a dusting of almonds. Got an itch. And then this Patreon community here, these people are amazing, and just like that's its own little world over there. So if you're curious what's going on over there, check out the Patreon. Anyway, that's it. I will see you next time in the kitchen, cooking, I promise. I'll see you very soon, next week probably. Ninja vanish!